Alright guys, so this is the video for the second foldable that covers the trapezoid, the isosceles trapezoid, and the kite. Okay, so let's start with the trapezoid. Okay, let's first start with the definition. Okay, so the definition of a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with only one pair of opposite parallel sides. Okay, now because it only has one pair of opposite parallel sides, that means that it is not a parallelogram. So it does not have all the properties that a parallelogram has. Okay, so we did learn about the anatomy of a trapezoid, so I'm going to write some of that on here. Okay, so if these two lines are parallel, okay, these are called the bases. So the two parallel sides are called the bases. The non-parallel sides are called the legs. Now, this angle and this angle, okay, these are called base angles. And remember, base angles come in pairs. So base angles. Okay, and then here's another pair of base angles. Okay, remember they come in pairs. So angles along the same base, or we refer to them as base angles. Okay, and then one more thing that I want to note. Okay, these two angles right here and here. Okay, because these lines are parallel. Okay, if we use this as our transversal, those are consecutive interior angles, and therefore they are supplementary. So those will always add to 1/8. Okay, and really we didn't learn a whole lot of properties about a trapezoid. We learned a lot about the anatomy and what each part is called. But we did learn about the mid segment. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in, that the mid segment of a trapezoid equals 1/2 parentheses base 1 plus base 2. Okay, the mid segment is 1/2 times the sum of the two bases. All right, the isosceles trapezoid is where we had a few more theorems. So there's a little more properties, or a few more properties that go along with the isosceles trapezoid. Okay, but by definition, okay, an isosceles trapezoid is simply a trapezoid with congruent legs. Okay, meaning that here's the two bases, they're still parallel, but my legs are now congruent. So just like an isosceles triangle, an isosceles trapezoid has congruent legs. Okay, one of the things we learned about these is base angles are congruent. Okay, remember base angles come in pair, meaning that this angle and this angle are congruent because those are along the same base, and then this angle and this angle are congruent. Okay, another thing we learned about these is that the diagonals are also congruent, meaning that if I connect from here to here, this is going to be congruent to this. Okay, and that's really all we had with an isosceles trapezoid. All right. Last but not least, we have the kite. Okay, and by definition, a kite is a quadrilateral with two pairs of consecutive congruent sides, but opposite sides not congruent. Okay, the reason opposite sides can't be congruent, because if they were, this would be a parallelogram, and the kite is clearly not a parallelogram. So we have these would be congruent, and these would be congruent. Okay, and we have a few properties of a kite. Okay, one of them is the fact that the diagonals are perpendicular. So if I draw this diagonal here and this diagonal here, it's going to cross at right angles. Okay, another property of a kite is that we have one pair of congruent opposite angles. Okay, and in this case, this whole angle right here would be congruent to this whole angle right here. All right, now there's one more property that we talked about with the kite, and that is that one diagonal, that's it, into two congruent triangles. Okay, and that is by the side theorem. Okay, so if I look at this a little closer, okay, if I were to draw this diagonal here, okay, we know this side and this side are congruent, this side and this side are congruent, and then the diagonal is congruent to itself, okay, that would make this triangle congruent to this triangle.